Jeffrey Epstein deep dive with Julian Field.
A few days ago, I sat down to research Jeffrey Epstein. Within 15 minutes, I had a headache and felt nauseous. An hour later, I had only written 2 sentences. The first was, Jeffrey Epstein was born wealthy. And the second was, Jeffrey Epstein looks like Scott Bakula if he quantum leapt into underage girls. Today, sitting down to write some more, I still have a raging headache, but I also have coffee and desperation. So here goes. A warning before we start, obviously this part of the episode includes accounts of sexual and physical violence against minors. After graduating high school, Epstein dropped out of college twice. He then taught calculus and physics at the Dalton School, which is an Ivy League prep school on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. Funnily enough, the school used to be named the Children's University School. During this period, he taught the son of the chairman of Bear Stearns, a massive investment bank. And wouldn't you know it, by 1976, Epstein was working as an options trader at Bear Stearns, which would later be investigated for fraud during the financial crash of 2008.
Right.
By 1980, he made partner. A year later, he left in a hurry after committing a Reg D violation, which is a regulation that makes institutions keep a certain amount of cash reserves in order to meet immediate withdrawals against their transaction accounts. I totally understand what that means. A year after that, Jeff started his own firm, J. Epstein & Co., which specialized in managing the wealth of billionaires. Clients included the owner of Abercrombie & Fitch, among others.
That guy hunts humans for sure.
Epstein bought a massive residence on the Upper East Side, a 9-story mansion just off 5th Avenue that spanned 50,000 square feet.
Holy shit.
The place was actually a private school that had been converted into a residence. Here are some excerpts from Vicky Ward's Daily Beast article giving her account of touring his mansion. The entrance hall is decorated not with paintings, but with row upon row of individually framed eyeballs. These, the owner tells people with relish, were imported from England, where they were made for injured soldiers. Next comes a marble foyer, which does have a painting in the manner of Jean Dubuffet, but the host coyly refuses to tell visitors who painted it. In any case, guests are like pygmies next to the nearby twice life-size sculpture of a naked African warrior. Tea is served in the, quote, leather room, so called because of the cordovan-colored fabric on the walls. The chairs are covered in a leopard print, and on the wall hangs a huge oriental fantasy of a woman holding an opium pipe and caressing a snarling lion's skin.
Oh my God.
Unclear. Under her gaze, plates of finger sandwiches are delivered to Epstein and guests by the manservants in white gloves. The office features a gilded desk, which Epstein tells people belonged to banker J.P. Morgan, 18th century black lacquered Portuguese cabinets, and a 9-foot ebony Steinway D Grand. Covering the floor, Epstein has explained, is the largest Persian rug you'll ever see in a private home, so big it must have come from a mosque. Amid such splendor, there is one particular startling oddity. A stuffed black poodle standing atop the grand piano. Quote, no decorator would ever tell you to do that, Epstein brags to visitors. Quote, but I want people to think what it means to stuff a dog.
What the hell does that even mean?
What the fuck is that?
Listen, a lot of people are debating what does it mean to stuff a dog. Epstein is just helping you out to understand it better.
Yeah, and to figure it out, you must be invited to his private...
But everyone has that
mansion.
question. What does it mean to stuff a dog? You know?
Jesus Christ.
Anyways, Jeffrey changed the name of his firm to Financial Trust Company, while simultaneously moving it to the island of St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands to skirt taxes, of course. At some point, Jeffrey purchased the island of Little St. James in the Virgin Islands as well. There, he built a luxury compound with a library, cinema, bungalows for guests, and a standalone Japanese bathhouse. Epstein also owned a mansion in Palm Beach, Florida, a ranch in New Mexico, an apartment in Paris, and of course the infamous Boeing 727 that he and his many friends used for transportation. Epstein had positions on multiple prestigious institutions like the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, the New York Academy of Sciences, and the Institute of International Education. So who were Jeffrey's posse? Well, he liked his wealthy finance people like Larry Summers, Mort Zuckerman, Ronald Perlman, and Tom Pritzker. But he also flew Bill Clinton more than a dozen times to his island, often without Secret Service, who do not appear on the flight logs from that period. He also brought Prince Andrew to the island multiple times, and of course Epstein also hung out with Donald Trump, who had a mansion near Epstein in Florida. In fact, Mar-a-Lago was also quite near to the Epstein residence. In 2002, Trump said, quote,
"I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. He has even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side."
Also in 2002, Vicky Ward was doing research on Epstein for a Vanity Fair profile piece. He invited Ward to his Upper East Side mansion. Quote, "The only book he'd left out for me to see was a paperback of the Marquis de Sade." During her investigation, Epstein repeatedly asked her, quote, "What do you have on the girls?" He tried to spin this as a question about his romantic exploits with adult women, which he really wanted to include in the article for some reason. Well, it turned out that Vicky had a few things on them. At the time, she had two sisters and their mother come forth with a story about how Epstein had molested both of the young girls. At the time, the younger sister was 16. Epstein had promised the older one to buy her art, and the younger one a trip abroad she needed on her resume to get into an Ivy League school. Vicky Ward writes, quote, "The girl's mother told me by phone that she had thought her daughters would be safe under Epstein's roof, not least because he phoned her to reassure her, and he also knew Ghislaine Maxwell with him at all times." We'll later find out that she was literally involved in the child trafficking ring as the madam.
Jesus.
When the girl's mother learned that Epstein had, regardless, allegedly molested her 16-year-old daughter, she'd wanted to fight back. Quote, "At the time, I wanted to go after him. I mean, physically, mentally, in every way, shape, and form. And the advice I was given was, he is so wealthy, he can fight you, he can make you look ridiculous, he can make your daughters look ridiculous, plus he can hurt them. And that was the thing that frightened me, was that he would know where they lived and could possibly just send somebody when they walk the dog at night or something around the corner, and we'd never hear from them again," she told the journalist. Epstein called Vicky when he learned that she was looking into this part of the story. He told her, quote, "Just the mention of a 16-year-old girl carries the wrong impression. I don't see what it adds to the piece, and that makes me unhappy." He then fabricated letters from the girls that he sent to Graydon Carter, then editor-in-chief of Vanity Fair, which Vicky was writing for. Epstein also personally visited the Vanity Fair offices. In fact, Vicky puts it as like he got past security. That level of weirdness.
Whoa.
Throughout all the harassment, Vicky and her sources stayed strong. Then she got a call in December of 2002. Graydon Carter was removing any mention of the girls from the article. He gave multiple reasons, but none of them made any sense. It was clear that the pressure Epstein and his friends had put on Carter had worked. Vicky was heartbroken. She gave birth to twins soon after. After she started recovering from the pregnancy, she went out to her first party. Quote, "There was Jeffrey Epstein sucking a lollipop. 'Vicky,' he said, 'you look so pretty.'" Before we move on, I recommend reading Vicky Ward on Epstein. She's done blockbuster work on him and has since, unsurprisingly, left Vanity Fair. In 2003, Jeffrey tried to buy New York Magazine, but was outbid by some other piece of shit. Among the other bidders was all-around good guy in front of the podcast, Harvey Weinstein. In 2003, after the Jeffrey Epstein Six Foundation, apparently he's the sixth person to be called that name, donated $30 million to Harvard for the founding of a mathematical, biology, and evolutionary dynamics program. The Harvard Crimson newspaper wrote the following about him. Quote, "While the mathematics teacher turned magnet remained unknown to most people until he flew President Clinton, Kevin Spacey, and Chris Tucker to Africa to explore the problem of AIDS and economic development facing the region, Epstein has been a familiar face to many at Harvard for years." In March of 2005, a 14-year-old girl and her parents reported that Epstein molested her at his Palm Beach mansion. Apparently, a classmate of hers at the Royal Palm Beach High School had, quote, recruited her, and she had given him a, quote, massage in exchange for money. In April of that year, cops searched Epstein's trash and found a telephone message with the girl's name on it and a time that matched the girl's visit to his mansion. They also found multiple other names and phone numbers. In October, the police is in the middle of interviewing another girl when Jeffrey Epstein calls her phone.
Oh my God.
She lets it go to voice message. Multiple girls are now corroborating the evidence, and Epstein's own butlers admit to police that he has multiple visits a day from girls. The cops get a search warrant, and on October 20th, they check out his mansion. In May 2006, police charged Epstein and 2 of his assistants with multiple counts of unlawful sex acts with a minor. The Palm Beach State Attorney Barry Krischer refers the case to a grand jury, which is weird. In June, the grand jury listens to only one of the girls and then indicts Jeff on a single count of solicitation of prostitution. No mention of the girls being underage or recruited from a local high school. Seems like somebody got to Barry Krischer. Epstein's legal team included Alan Dershowitz and Ken Starr of Clinton blowjob fame. So the guy who prosecuted Clinton for getting a beej from a 22-year-old was now defending a dude who had fucked 14-year-olds. Cool. Anyways, his lawyers aimed for a, quote, deferred prosecution that involved Jeff entering a, quote, pretrial intervention program with no jail time. The Palm Beach police chief, who was not stoked at all by this, pressured the FBI into opening a federal investigation they dubbed, quote, Operation Leap Year. They didn't mince words. Documents showed they were investigating possible, quote, child prostitution. By November, they were interviewing people in Florida, New York, and New Mexico. By May of 2007, the U.S. Attorney's Office was gearing up to present the case to a federal grand jury. Epstein's attorneys request a meeting to discuss the investigation. In June, a 53-page indictment is prepared by the U.S. Attorney's Office, and Jeff's team is in negotiations for a plea deal. In July, a grand jury asked for Epstein's computers, which had apparently been removed from his Florida mansion before the cops searched it. By August, Alexander Acosta gets involved. He is the U.S. attorney in Miami, entering into a plea deal discussion and delaying the computer requisition. In October, after a lot of foot-dragging from Epstein's legal team, absolute fuckface Alexander Acosta meets with an Epstein lawyer and agrees to a plea deal that involves not notifying the victims, keeping the deal under seal, and canceling all grand jury subpoenas, which included the computers. The prosecution asked for an addendum that would grant the victims an attorney who could fight for civil compensation. Epstein's team refuses. They delay again. The victims are told the investigation continues. 2008 finds Epstein's defense team arguing he shouldn't be registered as a sex offender. Meanwhile, the FBI has located more witnesses and evidence. Epstein's victims are repeatedly harassed by his lawyers during this time. Behind closed doors, an agreement is reached. Epstein will plead guilty to a single count of solicitation of prostitution and a single count of soliciting prostitution with a minor. He gets 18 months in jail and a year of house arrest. He does have to register as a sex offender, level 3, which means that there was high risk of him repeating his offenses. Much later, a free Epstein on the streets of New York is quoted as saying, "I'm not a sexual predator. I'm an offender. It's a difference between a murderer and a person who steals a bagel."
Jesus.
The victims only find out later about the plea deal. They enter a lengthy legal battle just to find out what the plea deal even involved. But at least they can find comfort in Jeffrey being in jail, right? Well, by October of that year, Epstein gets picked up by his private driver 5 days a week and is transported to his office in West Palm Beach, where he accepts visitors for up to 12 hours a day. Returning to prison only to sleep. In prison, he has his own private security escort. He's released 5 months early. He's supposed to stay in Palm Beach, but records show him traveling to Manhattan and the Virgin Islands multiple times during this period. In 2009, a police captain finds him just walking down a street in the middle of the afternoon when he's supposed to be at his office. His probation officer says it's cool because it's just exercise, even though Epstein himself said he was walking to work. Which, by the way, is extra horrifying because it means that he probably could have just walked by like the house of a victim.
Yeah.
Like just during his jail period, he could have just walked by the house of a victim.
Yeah.
Fucking cool, man. I love being rich, dude. In 2015, a woman called Virginia Roberts files a claim that she was recruited at Mar-a-Lago by Epstein and forced to have sex with Prince Andrew and Alan Dershowitz when she was underage. She explains that Ghislaine Maxwell, British socialite and maybe the closest person to Epstein, acted as his madam, wrangling underage girls for him and his friends to molest. They sent victims to recruit other girls from high schools, malls, etc. They also employed a modeling agency that funneled underage girls to various Epstein-owned locations. The girls were housed together and often promised modeling deals if they agreed to sleep with specific men. His promises seem credible because Jeffrey Epstein was close friends with Victoria's Secret owner Les Wexner. In fact, Roberts explained that Jeffrey often boasted of having, quote, dirt on many powerful men who then were, quote, in his pocket, because of all the video evidence Jeffrey gathered from the multiple cameras he had set up just to do that. That includes his island and mansion. Roberts sues Maxwell for defamation, and multiple civil lawsuits that same year claim that Epstein and Maxwell were operating an international sex trafficking operation. Maxwell later settles with Roberts for an undisclosed sum. In 2016, a lawsuit is filed in Manhattan by Katie Johnson. That was the name she was using at the time and not her real name, but it claimed that Epstein pimped her out to Donald Trump during a party at Epstein's mansion, where she says Trump raped her on 4 different occasions during different parties, and that Epstein did the same afterwards. She also claims that they hit her in the face multiple times when she resisted. In the document of her complaint, it stated that, quote, Trump responded to her pleas by violently striking her in the face with his open hand and screaming that he would do whatever he wanted. She claims that both of the men threatened her, explaining that if she ever told anyone about the rapes, her and her family would be harmed or killed. She was 13 years old at the time. Just days before the November 2016 election, Johnson pulls out of a press conference saying that she has been threatened and fears for her life. She later drops the lawsuit. In December of 2018, Bradley Edwards alleges that Epstein sued him to punish him for representing the victims in court. I never felt this day would ever come that somebody finally would hear us. It's overwhelmingly meaningful because nobody has ever treated us like we were victims. Edwards claims that the judge narrowed the scope of the case, which stopped Edwards from producing evidence that he abused and trafficked hundreds of young girls between 1999 and 2006. I'd like to thank Julie K. Brown from the Miami Herald for her reporting on the case. She has a really comprehensive and methodical approach, and honestly, I'm really grateful for that as a researcher. Epstein remains a free man at the time of recording. Trump remains the president of the United States. A redacted version of the infamous Black Book is available on the internet for anybody to read. So is the complaint lodged against Epstein and Trump by Katie Johnson.
Damn, that shit is so depressing.
It's fucked. It's so fucked.
Dear listener, everybody's face in our little recording room is just... We all just look like broken men.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say about it, to be honest.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
It's good.
Well,
I mean, it's a good reminder of why it's important to monitor what my daughter does on her phone. Yeah, at the very least.
Yeah. If she ever goes to a party at Mar-a-Lago,
right.
You should start to worry.
I should start to worry
because that was clearly a recruiting ground for underage prostitutes.
Well, it sounds like tons of places were that.
The fucking guy was he was so blatant. He was recruiting teenage girls from the local high school in Palm Beach.
Yeah.
Like, he's not even trying to import from abroad or something. He's just straight up like, hey, how's that local high school?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he's like, what's up? I know the owner of Victoria's Secret. You want to be a Victoria's Secret model? Oh, yeah.
The butlers said that basically he got massages from underage girls several times every day. His book is just hundreds of names. Like, the guy was just all the time doing this shit. His island is an absolute fucking pedophile heaven.
And nevertheless, it seems like he wasn't punished in the least bit.
No, and what's funny about, like, you could say, hey, there was a hit job on Trump, like, right before the election, but Clinton never really went with that shit because for obvious reasons, right? Like,
she was implicated.
Hillary, I mean, her husband definitely was. She wasn't on the flight logs, but he was. And yeah, so it's like, I don't think that girl's claim is incredible. It seems pretty credible, and it states that the president of the United States raped and beat her several times. I mean, I don't even fucking know what to say about that.
Fun fact.
2 presidents are basically pedophiles, like fucking violent pedophiles.
Yeah, confirmed by multiple sources in a way that it's not something you can write off as like a bullshit conspiracy.
Bill Clinton is on those flight logs for more than 12 different times, possibly as high as 24 times. He went to that island consistently. Sure, maybe a few of those times nothing happened, but I'm sorry. In the long run, you're clearly involved.
And like, you know what? It's not like there's also like an incredibly public case of Bill Clinton, forcing himself on like not just
He's
Monica
accused
Lewinsky,
multiple times, yeah.
not just Monica Lewinsky,
No.
multiple,
No,
Juanita
Monica
Broderick.
Lewinsky, the fact that he got fucking impeached for Monica Lewinsky is a joke. That was consensual. She was a 22-year-old.
Yeah.
That was the best thing he's ever done in his fucking life.
Yeah.
That was a decent thing he did, and it involves Trump, which is why real Pizzagate is so fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Like, your fucking man god, Donald Trump, is a fucking allegedly a man who has committed sexual and physical violence on a 13-year-old girl.